Hi everyone, Samantha from Jessama Tutorials here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to create Mokume Gane using a stamp. So I have made a Skinner blend using pearl white clay and Primo bright green, and so this is all Primo, and I've just reduced it down so that I have a long snake. And now what I want to do is I want to cut it into equal lengths. So I'm just going to fold this in half like so. Just going to cut it down this end, then pop those together, then I'm going to fold it in half again. Oops. And this I find is the easiest way for me to figure out what's the midpoint. Now I'll just stack it. Well, no, I'm not going to stack it actually. Just put them alongside each other, and I want to cut it in half again. I'm just going to clean up the edges. Put that in my scrap pile over here. And I'll pop them alongside each other like so. Now what I'm going to do is I've got pre-made black, but it's quite thick. I want to get this as thin as possible. So this was on my thickest setting, which is a number 7. Now I'm taking it down to my number 4 setting. Now I'm going to take it down to my number 1 setting. Hopefully it won't ripple. Now it rippled slightly, but that's not too bad, I can work with that. So when I have ripples, I just tend to stretch out the clay a bit like that, and it reduces the effect of the ripples. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay it across, and I'm going to smooth it into these holes, because I haven't flattened out these canes. So I'm just doing that so that I try to avoid as much air bubbles as possible. And I cut it down that end. I cut it down this end too. And I trim up over here. There we are. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my acrylic rod and I'm going to roll lengthwise. I don't want to widen the canes, I want to lengthen. So I've got a bit of an air bubble there, just squeezing it out. Okay. Now I'm going to pick it up with my blade. Just clean up my tile quickly. Move it over here so I can work with it easier. I'm going to flip it every now and then to roll on the other side so that I don't distort my cane. If you roll it just in one direction, what you'll find is that these will start to slope over. So I'm just going to slope over slightly to show you. And so you'll see it starting to show. So if you roll it in one direction, these ends will start to slope over, and so you'll get a lot of distortion. So you want to make sure that you're rolling on both sides. This way it will prevent getting distortion. Okay, now I'm going to roll through a pasta machine on my thickest setting, and I'm going to be doing it so that I lengthen the bullseye canes and not widen them. So I'm going to be putting it in the pasta machine this end and rolling it through. So I'm going to be on my thickest setting, like so. Now I'm just going to trim up the edges, curve my blade, and I'll curve this end just to trim it up. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make sure that that's properly smoothed out. I'll just move that to one side for the moment. And I'm going to bring over Lisa Pavelka's foliage stamp. Now you can use any stamp you want, just make sure that it's got a deep texture. So this is the stamp I'm going to be using today. Then I'm going to take my spritz bottle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray the clay. You don't want to spray the stamp because it's a bit of a hit and miss. If you wanted to spray a stamp, you'd want to spray the entire stamp. that way you wouldn't miss any areas and get your clay stuck in it. So I prefer to just spray the clay like so. Then I'll flip it. Now with this technique you always want to be doing this, you always want the solid colour to be in the stamp. If you were to do it the side with the bullseye cane still exposed, you wouldn't get the effect. You want it always the side that has the solid colour. So I'll just lay that on top. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rub this water over my fingers and I'm going to lightly spray the top of this clay. And this will prevent this clay from sticking to my fingers while I push it into the stamp. So what I like to do when I stamp it is I like to go from one end to the other. I don't like doing it all over the place, that way you can have trapped air bubbles. So I like to go from one end of the stamp and that way push the air bubbles out. And the reason I'm using my fingers and not my roller is because if you don't do it the first pass with your roller and you don't press hard enough, you can't do it again because you'll get a ghost image. So I like to stamp it with my fingers first and then go with the roller. I just find it's a safer way of doing it. So you can see I've pushed out all the air, and now we've got a dimpled area. So I'm just going to go dry my fingers on a rag. Then I'm going to take my roller. Don't dry the surface until you've used the roller because the roller can stick to the clay as well if you don't have water. So there we are. Now we've got it more flat. Now you'll go and dry your roller because you might use it later on and you might not want water on your clay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it and I'm going to peel it. Now do this slowly because sometimes, even though you did spray water, it can get stuck in your stamp. And if it did get stuck in your stamp, you don't want to be ripping this off. So just go slowly with that. Now just take the rag and I want to dry the back of my clay because before I slice off my indents, I want all of the water out of the way because that causes problems. So I'll just stick that down and then dab it with my cloth. There we are. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my flexible tissue blade. You can use a firm one, but I like to use the flexible one. You're going to hold it in the middle, as close to the middle as possible, and keep your hands resting on your work surface while you slice. Now before the slice, you want to make sure that your clay is properly stuck down onto your tile. You don't want this moving while you're slicing, because then your slice will get distorted. So. Just take your slice slowly, and you can see that it's moving still, very slightly. Okay, so you can see, you don't want to go too deep because you don't want to remove all of the black, but you can see that you've got an image of the leaves over here. So go slowly and go shallow, because you don't want to be removing too much of the black, because you want to keep that image. That's the whole point. There we are. Now you can do this with any Mokume Gane you wanted to. You could use the layered Mokume Gane for this as well, but I just wanted to show you what it looked like if you used bullseye canes. Oops, went a little bit too deep there, but this is another reason why I like using mica clay, because even though I accidentally went too deep there, you can still see a slight imprint of the leaves because it's mica clay, so you do get a mica shift if you go too deep. So that's just an added bonus. Yeah. Just go slowly. You don't want to rush this. If you rush it, you will accidentally go too deep and you can ruin the entire effect. Okay, we're just about done. Just go around and pick off any bits that you're not quite happy with. Okay. Just a little bit there. Okay, now all of these scraps that are getting taken off the surface, make sure to keep those, as you can use those in many different leftover clay techniques. Okay. Okay, there we are. Now I'll just take this and I'll move that aside. Oops. Just making sure that I get all of these bits out of the way before I carry on. There we are. Now I'm going to take my roller again and just check your surface for any scraps that might have stuck, because you don't want to get those rolled into the clay. Okay, now you'll take your roller and you want to roll that flat. And go both ways, just to make sure that you get it nice and flat. And by going in both directions, you won't distort the image as much. If you go in both directions, you'll just be widening. So this almost looks like a watercolor or a painted effect. There we are. And when you're done, just feel the top for any places you missed. There we are. That's flat. Now you'll take your firm blade. Always use the firm blade, I can't emphasize that enough. And you'll just shimmy it up. And there we are. That's how you can do Mokume Gane using a texture stamp to get the image that you want. So, I do hope that that video was helpful for you. And if you enjoyed it, please do have a look at the links below, as there'll be links to more videos like this one. And I hope to see you in the next video. Bye for now.